Welcome to Blackhawks Insider, the official podcast of the Chicago Blackhawks. We're presented each and every week by Chevy Drives Chicago.com. Drive what the captain, Jonathan Taves, drives. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Simplecast, Spotify, or whatever podcast platform you use. And like our YouTube page, as well as all videos posted on the Blackhawks YouTube channel. It is great to be with you for this mid-March episode of the Chicago Blackhawks Insider Podcast. I'm Chris Vosters, joined by Colby Cohen, Caley Chelios. Winter, it seems like, at least in Chicago, is going out like a lion. Bad weather this week, especially relative to where I'm coming from, off the fabulous spring break workcation for the Blackhawks in the lovely Sunshine State of Florida. But how are you guys doing? Are you guys used to the cold weather? All-Star break was kind of a long time ago now, so I think that sunshine that we all bottled up back in late January, early February needs to be replenished. But Colby, I don't think I saw you down by the Chicago River over the weekend with all of the St. Patrick's Day celebrators, did I?
You will not catch me partaking in that. Those days have passed, and it's funny that you're asking us about the weather. Caley, she already laughed because she knows where I stand on this type of thing, but what's the deal with the weather app? Like, oh yeah, it's going to be warm tomorrow, and then we wake up and there's like snow, or we're going to have a snowstorm and then it rains all day. I mean, I just don't really know what to expect, but I will say this. It's been a very mild winter here. It really has. I mean, I'm out walking the dogs, and I haven't been having to like bundle up a lot this year. So I do feel like we're going to pay for that at some point, whether it's like a blizzard in April or, whether it doesn't warm up until the end of May. We're going to pay for it, but it has been pretty mild, even for my, I'm always eager to complain about the weather, but I can't complain that much this year. Caley, it's been okay.
It's been okay. I don't know. I don't really believe in following the weather. I'm so I just vibe it out and hope for the best. But I think I saw the most relatable thing on social media. For the Midwest, there's like 3 winters, and like we're getting that like third wave where we're already through. What month is it? Almost the end of March, midway through March, and then we get heavy snowstorm right now. For me, I go in stretches, like get through January, All-Star break is your break, and then for me, Greek Easter is like my hoorah, spring's here, if it's like decent out, and everyone can kind of come out of hiding and really soak in the vitamin D again. So we're nearing Greek Easter, but we still have a few weeks away. Probably going to get snowed on a couple more times, and I have to say, though, Colby, I haven't seen the river be dyed for St. Patrick's Day in a while, and I haven't seen the city of Chicago just tearing it up like that from when we were downtown, and I actually missed it. I thought I outgrew all that stuff, and I was just all about the camaraderie and the energy, not necessarily the stumbling around at 3 p.m. when we were coming into work that was happening, but
we went on a bar crawl from noon to 3 before we hit NBC Studio on St. Patty's Day. So if we were laughing a lot on the broadcast, at least you know why, Chris.
I loved it. I think it was fun.
I was going to say, I just assumed you were laughing at my jokes, but
we were just laughing at Sharpie make fun of your jokes. That's more what we were laughing at.
Your best one was when you caught Sharpie coughing, Chris, and you said it's really hard to breathe up in this Tampa heat.
Yeah, Sharpie. It happens to all of us when sometimes you're midstream and get a tickle in your throat or something like that. But
it happened to me. Happened to me the other night when Pat was talking. I think it was post game, and I had a hiccup / I don't really know, and I literally squeaked like a mouse, and I looked over. Caley was just about to fall out of the couch laughing at me, and I'm like, oh, the camera's not on me, so nobody's going to know where that came from. So,
well, you have had, and you dug your own grave on a previous game broadcast, Colby, when you ordered Maggiano's during the post-game show and we're trying to like eat and do a post-game report at the same time. That's a recipe for disaster.
Valentine's Day, our food didn't come for like 2.5, 3 hours. It wasn't just me. Scott was there too, and he was waiting for his dinner as well. That was a rough night.
Did you just get a haircut, by the way, Colby?
Did I just get one? Sometime in the last like 2 weeks or a week or so. Yeah, I got one. I kind of wake up with a little bit of hat hair, you know.
No, I was
hat today though.
I was gonna say it looks like it's a little tightened up on the sides. So it looks good.
People get thrown when I'm not in a hat because I'm always in a hat. Like unless I'm at work, but I'm even at work a lot of times I'm in a hat, so it throws people. You got to keep people on their toes a little, Chris.
It's one of the big parts of hockey culture, definitely, the hat game. And a nice crossover to baseball, too. I come from a baseball broadcast background, and everyone's always wearing hats in that sport as well. So it was stylistically something that I was very happy to emulate from one sport to another. By the way, one quick follow-up to Caley's point about the 3 winters. That called to mind a tweet that John Hansen, who's our Blackhawks in-arena co-host, along with Jenna Rose, who helps us out on this podcast. Don't listen to the weather app on your phone. You have to watch the meteorological forecast from the local news. That gives you the best forecast of upcoming weather. So I think John's spot on with that. I have lost faith in my phone weather app. But that clearly, the bad weather over the weekend did not deter people from partying in downtown Chicago for St. Patrick's Day weekend, which I thought was actually going to be this weekend because St. Patrick's Day is on a Friday, this upcoming Friday. But I guess it's always the Saturday before St. Patrick's Day. And Caley, that actually called to mind, too. I haven't done St. Patrick's Day in Chicago since 2019, the year before COVID. And then I was looking at Twitter over the weekend, and it definitely seemed like the full-on shenanigans were back. After a 2 to 3 year hiatus, it definitely sounded like people were rocking and rolling again. And yeah, I'm with you. I don't think that I necessarily need to be knees deep in green beer by 10 in the morning. But yeah, I think if I have an off day in Chicago in the not too distant future, it'd be good to partake in the festivities again.
That river, I feel like it's calling your name, Chris. There's no way when you were there in 2019, I'd imagine you have a nice vlog or selfie going there. I feel like it's right up your alley. I love the river being dyed. I think it's cool.
I was not on TikTok in 2019, but Colby, Boston is another city that's got a pretty good St. Patrick's Day tradition, right?
Oh, yeah, and I actually got in a little bit of trouble in college on St. Patrick's Day, and not like real trouble. It was during the season. That's always the problem, for when you're in college hockey. If your team is doing well, you miss all of the fun nights of the year to go out. St. Patty's Day is usually during Hockey East playoffs. Which is like your conference tournament playoffs. And, same with spring break, you miss that. So my junior year, probably it was 12 guys decided it was like a Tuesday night. We didn't have a game until Friday. It was the Hockey East semifinals that we were going to go out for St. Patty's Day, and we were not allowed to go out. But we were like, it's probably our last year. So we went out. One guy on our team didn't go with us and went somewhere else. So 11 guys went to one place, and it was like an incognito spot. One guy went to more of our usual spot, and the bouncer told our strength coach that he was at that bar, and then the strength coach told our head coach. So then we lost on Friday night in the Hockey East semifinals. We played terrible. The next day, our coach makes the entire team come in. This is the night after our season ends. Come in at 6 a.m. Doesn't tell us why. Says who went out for St. Patrick's Day. So 12. Well, slowly but surely, guys, start raising their hand. It was the St. Patty's Day 12. and there were 12 of us. And we had to ride the bike. We had to do a 20-mile bike on the Airdyne, which is about an hour-long Airdyne bike ride. And it was the guys who went out. So there was a large group of us. And then for every Saturday for the next 6 weeks, the St. Paddy's Day 12, which became the St. Paddy's Day 9, because a couple of us that went out signed our pro contracts. I mean, geez, that was one of the reasons I was in a rush to sign, because I didn't want to have to ride the bike at 6 a.m. for the next 6 weeks. So St. Paddy's Day in Boston was always a lot of fun. We didn't get to partake in it too often, but my last year in school, we were like, we're going, we're doing it. And it cost us some early morning bike rides, but great memories nonetheless. I'm glad you asked. The good old St. Paddy's Day 12.
20 miles on an Airdyne, that's a grind, man. Holy
Brutal.
smokes.
I will say, though, coaches definitely appreciate all or nothing. At least it was around 50% of you that did it, because it's when there's 2 or 3 that go that you really get lit by your coach, or you have to reassess your fitness. So I know a lot of coaches definitely appreciate it. At least if the whole team goes, they like that team element of it, and they'll pretend like they're more mad than they really are. But if there's just 2 or 3 of you, then you're in big trouble. So that was good on you guys.
And I felt bad too, because Alex Chason, who was a freshman, who's actually, his name has been sort of out in the hockey world right now, because he just got called up by the Wings. He just signed. He scored a couple of goals against the Bruins over the last couple of days, and they were on national television. He was the only underclassman that went, because he was my favorite guy. So I was like, you're coming out with us. Let's go. So I made him come out with us, and then poor guy had to ride the bike for the next 6 weeks. I tried to go into the coach's office and fall on the sword for my guy Chason, Chaser as we called him, but it didn't work out. It's funny that this is all getting brought up, and literally on the broadcast this weekend for ESPN and TNT, they were talking about Alex Chason a lot. Played 11 years in the league, was on an AHL deal this year, gets signed, comes up, scores a bunch of goals. So it's funny that these things are also intertwined.
Well, I mean, look, you got to live a little bit, and I actually wanted to talk to you both about this because, St. Patrick's Day, it's kind of Chicago's spring break, if you will. And with the Blackhawks just playing in Florida, I mean, that's actual spring break and peak spring break going on in the middle of March. But, I mean, neither of you were ever really able to do that, right? I mean, Colby had to, kind of break team rules to enjoy St. Patrick's Day because both of you were in the middle of your college athletic careers, right? And in the middle of your seasons, too. So, I mean, did you guys ever really do spring break? Caley, what about you?
Nope, my parents did not allow me to go on senior spring break in high school, and then I spent the next 5 years not going on spring break because of lacrosse, but no regrets. It was a good bonding experience when it's just your team back there. We did not, and we never did the spring break thing. No wild trips abroad, and probably bet it for the best, if I'm being honest. It was not that bad, but I don't even know what spring break really feels like. I'm just gonna flat out say I have nothing to say about spring break. I never went on one.
I feel like the only spring break I've ever been on was last year when we went down to Florida 3-4 days before we played the Panthers.
It wasn't that
a little miniature. Well, I think last year when we went down there, if I remember, we went down on a Monday and we didn't play until maybe Wednesday. So we did get a solid 2-3 days in Florida before we went to Tampa last year. I feel like that's the closest thing I've ever had to a spring break too, because we were always getting ready for playoffs. And the one thing that I do remember, which was always kind of cool, they'd shut the dorms down. And BU, I think they still have this rule, but they would not let us live off campus. When we were scholarship players, you had to live in the campus provided housing. So, which was fine. We lived in, they hooked us up big time, but they would shut those dorms down. So they would put us in this like fancy hotel called Hotel Commonwealth, like right on Com Ave. And we would just be like ordering room service. I mean, we were living like absolute kings. So it was like a consolation for not getting to go to Florida and just like rage with all the rest of the college kids.
I was thinking about
You were
that
just
trip
there,
last
Chris.
year. Yeah, well, and I was thinking about the trip last year, and for some reason, because playing the Florida Panthers is great. You stay in Fort Lauderdale, right on Fort Lauderdale Beach, right off A1A. And last year, I don't remember the spring break crowd being what it was on this most recent trip. I mean, it was packed. And it was just, it was like this phenomenon where, you had all of these 18 to 22-year-olds, and for some reason, instead of like spreading out down the beach, they all congregate in one area. And it's just like looking at it from the clear-eyed perspective that I have as a 31-year-old now. It's like, what's the play there? I mean, why don't you guys just spread out? Like, why like the moths to a flame approach, and just everybody is like, let's try and squeeze into as confined of an area on this massive beach as we can. So it was a sight to behold. That's for sure. And fortunately, we were staying a little bit farther down the road from where it was peak spring break season. But I brought my sunscreen just in case. Didn't get too torched.
Who got the worst? Who got the worst? Who got the worst? Like who got it the worst this year? Because last year there were a couple of people in the running. I'm not going to put any names out there, but there were a few people that looked like a lobster.
Above the sun.
Yeah. It was very interesting. So, Mitch Kersner, our producer, got sunburned again.
So two for two in a row.
It wasn't quite as bad as last year, but he got cooked. You know what? I tell you what, Blackhawks head equipment manager Troy Parchment, pretty beat red. Not gonna lie. But
you know what though? I feel like you got to give him a pass because that guy lives indoors.
Yeah.
Dealing with the amount of mountains that he has to move on a daily basis, and especially with the trade deadline, I feel like Parchy gets a free pass on probably just wanting to eat as much sun as he could.
Yeah. I mean, God bless him. I was like, Parchy, good for you, man. You were out in the sunlight. That's where you should have been. It was also nice actually kind of putting a bookend on the trip in Tampa. Great city, Caley, and the downtown area especially was awesome. And I know the Frozen Four is going to be down there too, Colby, which is where you'll be shortly for ESPN's coverage of the NCAA hockey tournament. I mean, Tampa, like they should just put the Frozen Four down there every year. But Caley, what was your favorite part about living in Tampa?
Yeah, I feel like it's changed so much, but during like 2018-19, like between the Bucks, the Rays, the Lightning, like it became such a fun sports town and like an underrated city. There's not a lot of traffic. The Bucks won, the Bolts won, the Rays were really good. So there was just like this great community feel there. All kinds of different people. A lot of people in Tampa too are not necessarily from Florida. I mean, a lot of them are from elsewhere and they're coming down to Tampa. So you had a great mix of people from the area, a lot of people from the Midwest. Love the Midwest. And the best part for me, even when I was pregnant, it was great. I could just walk across the river and be at the rink and have a great little apartment on Harbor Island, which is right behind Amalie Arena. And it was amazing. Like, I think the only thing that was a little dicey was just the fact that, like, around the water, there were gators. And, like, I had a dog, like a 80-pound lab that I was always paranoid about. But other than that, like, Tampa was an amazing sports town while I was there. The restaurants, everything was getting built up. And the fact that you could just, like, live right on the water there and walk to the rink. And I never wore shorts and a T-shirt to the rink, but you could. Players did. Players loved being there. That was one thing for me, Colby, that I was a little surprised to learn that like how many players wanted to retire in Tampa or come back and play for Tampa at the time. even though it was kind of an unconventional hockey town, it became probably one of the best non-traditional markets and somewhere that players just love to be.
You know what? I don't have the years, obviously, of living experience there that you do, Caley, but my experiences in Tampa have been exactly what you're talking about. And we actually played them in the conference finals in 2011, and that was as loud of an arena as we were in. I mean, during the playoffs, they get those, like, what are those big horns called that they use in soccer?
Like vuvuzelas or something?
Yeah, they had those going in the playoffs that year. And, like, all the healthy scratches, which is, that's I had my own stall in the healthy scratch suite. So we were in a suite next to fans, and they harassed us the entire playoff series. They were every time Tampa scored, they'd be blowing their horns into our suite, yelling at us, like taunting, because we're all in suits. It's like kind of obvious. There's a number of us sitting there in suits. Everybody at that point had a beard going. So it's a great city. I'm really excited for the Frozen Four this year, Chris, because it's in Tampa Bay. Last year was Boston, which was a blast for me. This year, Tampa. Next couple of years, St. Louis and Minnesota. Not quite as excited as I am for Tampa, but then after that, it's Vegas, so that'll be fun. So I've got a good little bookends on the next couple of Frozen Fours. But Tampa's, I agree with Caley. I think most players want, like, that is like one of the number one destinations for a free agent right now is Tampa Bay, if not the destination for a free agent.
Spend some time on the Hillsborough Riverwalk, Colby, when you're down there. I will, at the risk of sparking a controversy here, St. Louis, for the Frozen Four, you might actually get a little bit of some spring-like weather down in St. Louis. Spring usually hits St. Louis a few weeks ahead of when it arrives in Chicago, so maybe St. Louis won't be the end of the world. But yeah, Tampa, Boston, Vegas, those are some great locations, that's for sure.
It'll be snowing in Minnesota, I'm sure. I'm going to need like a parka in April when we're in Minnesota.
I would bank on that. It's so easy to get caught in the day-to-day grind of the hockey season that sometimes you lose track of where you are, or it fades to the background. It doesn't really matter. It's like, okay, there's a game. I got to get ready for it. Doesn't matter where we are. Being down in Florida, though, like in the sunshine in March, coming off a long winter, I just had to remove myself from my hotel room and get outside into the sunlight and the sunshine a little bit, and it was good for the soul. So you guys did a great job on the intermission reports, the pregame and postgame shows, and got to talk a little bit of hockey, I guess, as we work towards or through the final 20 games of the season. And Taylor Radish had a great road trip. That was a guy that I wanted to spotlight. My main takeaway from the last 3-game road trip for the Hawks, he had a 3-goal road trip. He had 2 goals in the Detroit game. Was on hat trick watch in that. Followed it up with a big goal against Tampa to tie the game in the third period. So Max Domi is still the Blackhawks goals leader on the season. He's got 18. Of course, he's with the Dallas Stars now. Taylor Radish now has 17 on the season and picked up his 30th point in the Tampa game. And for a 25-year-old who's only in his second season at the NHL level, a 30-point season, possibly a 20-goal season as well. That's big. That's a big confidence boost, I think. And I think a player that will be fun to keep an eye on, Caley, down the stretch of this season. I think he's been playing well. What about you?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the 20-goal mark for players is a big deal, as much as it's the typical hockey cliche. They're not focused on it. You are focused. Like, that's a big deal. When you hit 20, and other teams are going to start paying attention to when you start to put up those sort of numbers. And Taylor's not just been performing really well, and he has a great shot. He had a lot of great experience going through Tampa Bay with the Cups and trying to find a role on one of the best teams, if not the best team in the National Hockey League at the time, and played a little bit more in a bottom 6 role. So with more opportunity, more ice time, I think he's really made the most of this rebuild for himself in Chicago. And also just a very high character person. We talked to him and interviewed him earlier in the season, and quieter guy. You know, he mentioned being a little bit shy, but he seems like he's really found a group and found he looks comfortable. And that's big to be in a position that he's in a rebuild and put up the numbers he is and quietly kind of become a little bit of a leader, I think, in some ways in the locker room. Second year pro, like you said. He's great. And like totally unhockey related, we talked about having helmet hair or hat hair, sorry. There's a lot of players that go into, you have to get the hat before you do an interview. You got to put a ton of water in it. That's one of the keys. It's not always product. It's a lot of water. Taylor Raddysh's like helmet hair during an interview is incredible. It looks like he just came out of a salon, I have to say, every time. Like when you guys interviewed him in Tampa, I was shocked. Like my hair would look horrible coming out of a helmet after 20 minutes like that. So kudos for the hair on Taylor Raddysh, but also kudos to almost hitting the 20-goal mark and having a very successful season, I think, in Chicago.
And Caley does have receipts for that comment because she said that live and in the moment, and we were all looking at her and we're like, yeah, you're right. He might have better hair than Sharpie. And we were like, whoa, no, let's not go too far. I know. I'm just saying, I don't want to go too far there, but he's outperformed his contract. I mean, I think a lot of people, when he got traded here, I think a lot of people thought that those were contract throw-ins because, you gave up 2 first-round picks to get Brandon Hagel. Teams can only have X amount of NHL contracts. Like, I think a lot of people just assumed that, but that is not the case at all with Taylor Raddysh. I think he was a prospect that Kyle targeted and his staff targeted, and they liked him. He's got size. He has a little bit of everything, and you look at how much he makes, you look at his contract status. He's a really intriguing player because his production versus his contract, it's very high production for what he costs. And seeing as how he's still on the younger side at 25. He's not a UFA yet, so he's still restricted in his ability to go out and really test the market. I think a lot of teams were interested in him at the deadline, and I think the better he plays down the stretch, I think the Kyle's going to get a lot of calls about him this summer, which is a compliment to how he's played. I mean, you scored 20 goals and we could say this is his kind of first really full season in the NHL, right, where he's playing every night, playing in a good top 6 role. You get 20 goals on a team that doesn't score a lot. I feel like it's even higher value, Caley, just because we're not the highest scoring team. Our power play is not 24%. He's not getting freebies, on special teams. So, I'll just kind of echo your sentiment in that 20-goal plateau. That's a big number. That's like a 25 or 30 goal pace on a playoff team, on a team that's scoring 3+ goals a game. So kudos to him for making the best out of this opportunity. I think for a young player, Chicago is a great place to establish your career right now because of this rebuild. And I think other young players are going to take note about that around the league. I think that's going to put the Blackhawks in the running for any interesting college free agents that seasons might be ending here over the next couple of weeks. I know there are a couple out there that are undrafted that'll be intriguing targets for a lot of teams. But I just think that, Chicago, you look at Taylor Raddysh, you look at Cole Gutman, you look at some of these players that, were in different situations, namely Tampa Bay, both of those players that I just mentioned. They come to the Blackhawks and, Cole Gutman again. I mean, I know he's been awesome to watch and almost really excited because I don't foresee him ever going back to the American League. He looks like an NHL hockey player to me, and he's just going to continue to get better like Raddysh has. So, great opportunity for some of these young guys, and I think we'll see more of it as the season goes on, maybe 1 or 2 free agents, and then I think we'll see a lot of it next season with players being given opportunities.
Gutman just keeps, greasy goal here, assist there. I mean, he's been one of the unexpected turnouts of even the recent part of the season here, and now about a dozen games into his NHL career, a little more than that. But Yeah. Caley, any thoughts on the team coming off this Florida road trip, another 5-game road trip up ahead around the Boston game, but anything that's kind of been on your mind related to the team right now, on or off the ice?
I'll add on to the Gutman train because he has been a lot of fun to watch, and he came in, I think, with a chip on his shoulder, wanting to prove he can be a well-rounded player. And he does have the hockey IQ. We see that on a nightly basis. But also just he kind of reminds me a little bit of Tyler Johnson. They didn't know each other when they were both in the Tampa Bay organization, but Tyler really commended his work ethic. Everybody works hard, but he has that little extra something that puts him above everybody else. And, being undrafted, and especially in Tyler's case, and, having that kind of chip on your shoulder throughout your career, an undersized centerman. I think Gutman has that, and Luke Richardson's commended him for a little bit of. They knew he had a high hockey IQ, but also just his separation of speed. He takes 2 or 3 strides, that explosiveness, his ability to protect the puck. Against some really good teams too. Toronto. I mean, the games that he's putting up numbers, and then just learning a little bit more. That 200-foot game for him at this speed is probably going to take a little bit more. But what we're seeing right now, like Colby said, he looks confident. He looks NHL ready, and he hasn't had an off night to me on a team where they're basically in training camp again after the trade deadline. And there's been a lot of turnover coming from, that 5-game win streak with Patrick Kane in the lineup to where they are now. So definitely wanted to shout out Cole Gutman. And I guess that last quick one would just be the coaching staff having this team playing really hard right now at this point in the season. Joe Brand had a funny tweet about a fan who was disappointed. This is not the type of season that we want to see this team playing really hard to the end of the season out of all the years that they're going to do it. Not when you've got Bedard, Fantilli, and top 3 picks that could be franchise changing, or at least extremely opportunistic for them. So I will say the coaching staff has done a great job at making the rink, the UC, and taking advantage of the fact that it's the NHL and every day is a great day to be in the league, and this team's playing like it.
I just think, it's so hard to not get caught up in Bedard fever. And, if, Connor Bedard is going to be the difference between whether the rebuild works or not. I don't know. I just think you gotta. I find myself personally tugging on my own reins to not think in quite that extreme of a way. I mean, whether they get Bedard or not, there are going to be so many things that have to happen. It's not going to be a done deal. Okay, we get Connor Bedard and we're going to get back to the Stanley Cup, and however, there's so many other factors in play. And so I just am trying to remind myself that, it's all going to work out the way that it's supposed to. I mean, Colby, look, Kyle Davidson and his team, they've got all kinds of different scenarios mapped out.
I mean, you just really can't predict anything because I think back to, look, the Blackhawks picked Jonathan Toews 3rd before they picked Patrick Kane 1st. I mean, and you don't know. You look at, and then you measure Jonathan Toews against Kirby Dach. They were both 3rd overall picks. You really just don't know. That's the reality. And yeah, do we think that Bedard is going to be this incredible player? Sure, but Adam Fantilli could be a better pro, or you just don't know, and that's why I totally agree with that, Chris. Would it be great? Sure, but there's so many other things. There's not just one draft. There's this year's draft. There's next year's draft as well. There's a kid that is lighting up the U.S. Junior Hockey League right now, Macklin Celebrini, who's going to probably be the 1st overall pick next season, who looks like he's on that track of being a star player. So many things have to happen. The Blackhawks have so many picks. We just watched Braden Point put on a clinic. Braden Point was a 3rd-round pick by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Caley and I were talking about this, and I made the comment to her that I think on any given night, Braden Point's the best player in the NHL. So, more than just a first or second or third or fourth, whatever. Again, this is going to be the one thing that Kyle has talked about with wanting to spread out draft capital and everything. The Blackhawks want to be set up for the next 2 decades, the next decade, right? You're not looking to get to the playoffs one season and even win one season. You need longevity in your success. You don't want these crazy peaks and valleys in the franchise. So, look, there's going to be on years, there's going to be off years, but I think that's a smart move by you, Chris, to not, put all your eggs in that Bedard basket, because we really just don't know. We're talking about an 18-year-old kid. Yeah. We're talking about 18-year-old kids. You just don't know. Look, Patrick Kane, those guys are the exception to the rule. Those are not the general rule. So whatever those ping pong balls show us after the season, Kyle and his team will adjust and be prepared for whatever. And then next year, there's going to be another lottery, right? I mean, this is a rebuild. This is how these, the Rangers had the first overall pick, or no, they had the second overall pick. They picked Capo, and then the first overall pick, they get Lafreniere. Like these things, you look at Edmonton, they had the first pick, then they had the third pick, and then they had the first pick. I mean, so getting caught up in it is fun, but also it doesn't tell the true tale. It's not letter of the law.
Caley, did you notice the in-arena feature at the United Center where Luke Richardson and his wife were? I think it was it's like a Hellsberg Diamonds sponsor where it's like husband and wife or boyfriend girlfriend are on, and this time it was Luke Richardson and his wife, and the question was asked, what would Luke do, or what industry would he be in if he were not in hockey? And then both people write their answer on the whiteboard, and then they show the answer at the same time. Did you happen to see that, Caley?
I have seen that one. I've seen a few of the players do that. I love that. It's a great question. I'm in the same boat as Luke Richardson. I would love to be a rock star. I can't sing, or I for sure would have done it, but no boss. And that is my dream. I would love to be that, but I'm horrible at singing. So there was just never a chance for me to do that. But I like that. I'm with Luke. Being a rock star is the way to go. It worked out for him pretty well, I would say.
Yeah, but hold on.
What about
you? What would you be like a pop star, or would you be
heavy metal? Heavy metal.
Yeah, heavy metal.
If I could play
country.
guitar, for sure, I would love to be a heavy metal maniac. But no, I think I want more I want Adele, Lady Gaga pipes, but the opportunity to go both pop or rock if I wanted to.
Okay.
I have a little bit of angstiness, maybe a
What's the movie? What's the movie with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga? So kind of you could go either way. You could be the pop star.
Yeah,
I
would like the
crazy
I would
singer
like
at
the
the piano.
versatility of both, and then eventually work in that I could play music. I also like Alicia Keys and R&B a lot. So I have a lot of different daydreams of where I would be in my life if I could have sang. But I'll take life in the NHL too. It's a great life, and I'm not going to complain about it. But being a rock star would definitely have its perks. What about you, Chris? What would you have done if you weren't a broadcaster?
That's a good question. I mean, I probably would have been a hockey player, right? Something where I wish I were an athlete. I don't know. I being a broadcast, not to be corny, but being a broadcaster is always what I wanted to do. I would have loved to have been, like a pro athlete, I think, but this is definitely the next best thing. When I was a kid, a little kid, I always wanted to be a shoe salesman for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. I always just getting new shoes, or a truck driver. So one of those two things. That's my fallback option if this.
Why? Because when you would be on the highway, you'd be asking them to honk their horn.
100%. 100%. Yeah. That was me in the back seat. But Luke Richardson, by the way, the reason I did bring this up as I get off on a tangent.
Oh,
here,
so there was a point.
There was a point. I talked to Luke about that, and I was like, "So what bands would you want to be in?" And he's a big Metallica fan, Godsmack, and 3 Days Grace, which is a Canadian band. So not only in Canada, like I know 3 Days Grace, obviously, but they are from Canada. They originate there. And he's got some connections in those bands too. So, I thought that was a good way to see the personal side of Luke Richardson for sure. And I think Mrs. Richardson thought that Luke would be a trainer if he were not a hockey player or coach. And I think that actually is very, very plausible as well, given Coach Richardson's penchant for off-ice training, and he continues to be a workout maniac on the exercise bike. So I think for Luke, either of those would have been pretty good options. But that's a good feature. I enjoy that. Anything else that you guys want to talk about hockey related? I've got a Selly and Chirp queued up, but anything else on your mind right now before we segue into that?
Bring on the Selly and Chirp, Chris. We're ready for it.
Survey says. Okay, well, the Oscars took place last weekend, and that is my Selly or Chirp. I'll just leave it at that. My personal, I guess, story is that I tuned in very late to the Oscars in time to see Brendan Fraser win Best Actor, and I was shocked. I was like, the guy from The Mummy won Best Actor. And Caley obviously is a huge Brendan Fraser fan. I can't wait to unpack that. And then
what was the movie he was in with Elizabeth Hurley? That was a good movie with the wishes and that was like a good movie. Oh, I got to get the name now. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
No, let's look that up, Colby.
Got to look up the name.
Yeah.
I'm
Brendan Fraser movies on Wikipedia. Then Best Actress, I had not heard of a single one of the movies that the actresses were in, and frankly, I had only heard of, I think, like one or two of the actresses themselves. So I personally, I'm not sure that I'm going to kind of chirp the Oscars. I don't think it's really an indication of what audience members like in terms of movies. But also I want to kind of mourn the shift in the movie-going experience. I haven't been to a movie theater since COVID, to be honest. And I was just thinking, like, I want to go back to the movies again. I want to become someone who is in the know on what the box office hits are. So, Caley, what about you? Are we celebrating or chirping the Oscars?
So many thoughts. I don't know where to start.
So many.
I mean,
thoughts.
I'll chirp them in the sense that I don't watch them anymore. I used to enjoy watching them. I used to enjoy watching the red carpet and all the style that goes into it, but I don't really watch anymore. But I have to say, Brendan Fraser, I didn't even watch his movie. I don't care. Tarzan was my first crush when I was a young girl, and every summer we spent in California. We only had like a few VHSs. Wow, we're dating ourselves a little bit, but one of them was The Mummy. So I think we watched The Mummy like 400 times a summer, every summer for 20 years. One of the best movies ever. Him,
The Mummy's
and Evie, great movie. I can speak, like, I don't know what that language is, like mummy. Like, I can literally recite any line from that movie in Egyptian. I don't know what it is. The ancient pharaoh talk. Love Brendan Fraser. Did not watch his movie, but I'm so glad he won. Tarzan is iconic. Brendan Fraser and The Mummy, and that relationship with, I know her name's Evie in the movie. I forgot what her, Rachel Weiszman maybe, but I'm celebrating that. Rachel Weisz. I'm celebrating that love and that actor big time, Chris. I'm so glad you brought him up. We're on the same page, sorta.
It George of the Jungle, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, I said
Okay.
Tarzan. So dumb.
Great movie. George of the Jungle was so great.
Brendan Fraser and George of the Jungle is iconic for our age group, especially.
Yeah,
Incredible. True. First crush. Loved him.
Yeah, I was a little confused when you said Tarzan.
My bad. I had Tarzan, but George of the Jungle.
Watch out for that tree.
Yeah, we used to call my little brother was so wild. We used to call him George of the Jungle, and then
it's a great
the nickname George kind of stuck for a while with him, and then that mutated into some other names. But I did find the movie that I was talking about. It's from the year 2000. Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley. It's called Bedazzled, and it's a hopeless dweeb, Elliot Richards, granted 7 wishes by the devil to snare Allison, the girl of his dreams. So obviously this was a chick flick in 2000s. And that movie was just on all the time. I remember that better than I remember The Mummy almost. So Jenna Rose, our producer, she put it in the chat. She had it before I got to Google. So kudos to you, Jenna. I'm glad we're vibing on that one. What, Chris?
That's what I'm saying, though. You know, Brendan Fraser, he's gone from The Mummy, George of the Jungle, and Bedazzled, and now the guy's winning an Oscar. So what's
comeback of the year? Comeback of life.
That movie's from 2000. Wow. So
yeah, no kidding.
I will say this: as far as the Oscars goes, I did not watch a second of it. I'm not really someone who I don't really watch award shows. I will say, though, that I'm going to chirp it, and the reason I'm going to chirp it is because when I wake up in the morning and I, open whatever different news source apps that I want to open, and I like to just sort of catch up on different things. Well, when I open any news app this morning, everything is about the Oscars. Half the articles are about, making jokes about how they've had one Oscars with no incidents or whatever, no slaps, no incidents, no nothing. So I can't get my normal news because the Oscars is every article. So I'm chirping it, not super into it. I don't have the same love for Brendan Fraser that you do, Caley. I'm sorry, but he certainly wins Comeback Player of the Year because, like I said, I don't think any of us have seen him in a movie in a very long time.
All right, on that note, who wants to go next?
I'll do mine. A little bit broad, but try to be tight with it. So mine, I really liked, and I was caught last night looking at a lot of arrival shots from different players. I like seeing what new trends are, especially in men's fashion with suits and everything. So mine is going to be, do you celebrate or chirp kind of the more casual style now that's accepted in the NHL? It's kind of leaning towards maybe some of the other professional sports where you don't have to wear a suit every day to the rink. And specifically, I love the earring. I think Michael Jordan's hoop was always the most iconic piece of jewelry to me among some of the superstars in the world. And I love that Austin Matthews, and I'll say Bieber too, kind of mixes it up between a cross, a hoop, a little different thing. So are we celebrating or chirping the earring and that kind of new looks that are being sported in some of the arrivals?
I'm gonna celebrate it, and I agree. You know, MJ's hoop, yeah, for sure, iconic when it comes to athlete jewelry. You know, and especially looking at how in other sports, jewelry has become so prominent. You know, the hoop just kind of simple, a little understated, but you always see it. You always know it's there. I like Austin Matthews' riff on that as well. I will just say though that while I am in favor of the more casual trend, Lucas Reichel had a great suit on the last road trip. He was wearing this. It was like a blue checkered suit, and it was really, really sharp. So hat tip, stick tap to Lucas Reichel for a really good take on the classic hockey pregame look. But it was very sharp, I gotta say.
Well, Caley, I certainly cannot chirp the earring phase or thing that's going on because when I was 4 years old, I got my left ear pierced.
No way.
And I wore an earring in my ear for. I voluntarily, I begged my mom to get it. And I will tell you why. My cousin growing up was my idol. He was, an Olympic skier on his way to play in the NFL. His name is Jeremy Bloom. He had a really interesting sports career because he ended up having a standoff with the NCAA sort of before all this NIL stuff happened, and the NCAA deemed him ineligible after his second year at Colorado, at the University of Colorado. So then he had to go to the, turn pro early, actually gets drafted by the Eagles in 2006, 1 year before me. Getting drafted by Colorado, so we kind of switched places as far as like geography. He came to Philly, I went to Colorado where he lived, and he was my idol as a kid. I thought he was the coolest guy in the world. He was a skier, a football player. They had, he was winning World Cups when he was like 14 years old as a skier. He was the number one skier in the world, so just an incredible athlete. He pierced his ear. And so I wanted to be anything and everything that he did. I wanted to be just like him. So I was like 4 years old. They had all come to Philly for a family reunion. This is all my mom's side of our family. And I was like, I want that. And so my mom was like, it's going to hurt. Are you sure? And I was like, yeah. So my mom took me to the mall, the King of Prussia Mall, and not to Claire's. And I think we did it at one of those little, those little kiosks. Probably not the safest in retrospect. And got an earring. And I mean, I had a couple of studs. I had a couple of little hoops. I even remember having a lightning bolt, which was really cool.
Wow. I love this.
And I wore it till I was probably I'm pretty sure I wore it up until probably middle school. I think that in middle school, I think one of my teachers complained and said it was like a distraction. So my mom made me, I used to do crazy stuff. Like when I was in middle school one time, I just decided to dye my hair pink, and I just you could wash it out. And I just went to school with pink hair one day, and people were freaking out. It was a distraction. So I was not afraid to mix it up, Caley, with that. So celebrating the earrings, good for the guys for having their own style. The one thing I don't necessarily understand with this new style trend is the fanny pack up here. I don't get that. That's one thing I just don't understand is you've got the fanny pack, but then you're wearing it kind of on your, I don't know, is it your shoulder, your chest? I don't really get that one, but to each his own. Good for them. Good style.
Is that some sort of take on the cross-body bag, Caley, by Lululemon?
Yeah, I feel like that's a whole nother topic. I actually feel like, though, from a utility perspective, I've seen some really fat wallets amongst players and guys in particular. I don't know. I think it looks funny when you crunch a massive wallet into a fitted pair of pants. So in all fairness, you guys sort of need a fanny pack or a cross-body bag as it is, in my opinion, if you don't have big pockets in your sport coat. So I like it. Matthews, I've seen wear it a couple times. I think it's cool. I think we're going to see more of it.
Totally.
You almost got one yourself, Chris.
I did. And actually, it's funny because I thought I was trying to wear it the wrong way in that video. But as it turns out, that's actually kind of the way people wear it. So, who knows? I accidentally stumbled into a trend, Caley.
New trend.
Who knew? Yeah, a trendsetter. I tell Colby that all the time. He doesn't believe me, but
maybe you can accidentally go to Claire's and get a piercing.
New nickname
He's right. I do not believe him.
New nickname for Colby Cohen, by the way, the Distraction.
The Distraction.
Yeah, right. When I was my earring was
and
such a distraction. Imagine now. You couldn't. That would be fine now. You couldn't say I was a distraction for the earring now. Your teacher would get in trouble for that now.
Yeah, definitely not.
All right.
Definitely not.
Colby, why don't you hit us with yours?
So, big football news in Chicago. Chicago Bears. What were they going to do? Are they going to trade Justin Fields? They're going to trade the first overall pick. Part of me even thinks that they leaked the fact that they would potentially trade Justin Fields in order to drive the price up on that first overall pick, sort of letting teams know, hey, we'll take Bryce Young, we'll move on from our guy. They trade the first overall pick, huge haul back. I haven't seen a ton on Twitter. We were at work when it happened at NBC Sports Chicago. It seemed like it was a mixed bag of responses to if the local Bears fans were happy. Is this a good move when you get the first overall pick? Do you take the guy, or do you do what the Bears did? I personally, I thought it was a good move. I liked it. Chris?
I don't have anything wrong with the move, with trading the first overall pick. I didn't really understand, I guess, the method, the way that it was carried out. Like, because to me, they leaked the fact that they wanted to trade the pick, and I thought that maybe the logic behind that is that you create a bidding war, like the teams that really want that number one pick then come out of the woodwork. They go at you hard with a great deal. To me, like I would have been way more coy about whether or not I was going to trade that pick, because then you could have gotten a team to be truly desperate and throw a lot at you. And not that the Bears didn't get a lot, but I mean, now they have the 9th pick. So to me, that's kind of whatever. If they had gone from 1 to 3 or 1 to even 5, and then gotten the 2 first rounders beside that. So again, 2 future first round picks. I mean, that's way in the future. I mean, if the draft works differently in the NFL than it does in the NHL. I mean, if the Panthers draft Bryce Young or get really good in the next couple of years, then maybe those draft picks kind of sink in value for the Bears. So I kind of would have wanted more up front too than just DJ Moore, who's a wide receiver 2 or 3, but I don't think is really going to do a whole lot to drastically change the Bears offense. But so I'm kind of unimpressed, to be honest. I don't think the Bears situation is wildly better now that they've made that move, but it's like the Blackhawks. Time will tell. We'll see what they do with the picks. And I think about Kyle Davidson, who said that, okay, now it's up to us. Now it's up to the Blackhawks. Now we have to draft well with these picks, and that's what the Bears need to do now. Now that they made the move, now their scouting department needs to step to the table and make sure that they draft well.
It's like a SERP, an in between a Sully and a chirp for you, Chris. I simply cannot follow up that analysis because I'm not that dialed into this one. I thought it was a good move, but I'm not going to lie. I've been doing a lot of book work for children lately. So between the Blackhawks, watching the team, staying up late, and then reading some books on toddler behavior as my kids emerged to almost 3 and 18 months, I did not dial into as much analysis as you could provide on the Bears trading. But I'll
way
celebrate.
More important, Caley.
Thanks, Chris. I really like your analysis, Chris. So I'm going to go with a SERP, kind of an in-betweener. I'm celebrating it. Hopefully it pans out for the Bears in the long run, because I'm eager, coming from Tampa Bay, to have be in a city again like Chicago when there's multiple teams that are really kind of clawing their way up the totem pole and becoming a one step closer to getting where we all want to be in this sports town. So I'll Sully.
And I agree with that. I think it's fun when multiple teams are good. I think it creates a great energy in the city. I think fans start kind of getting more involved with the other teams, and then you kind of just bring everybody together. I saw it in Boston pretty much firsthand while I was in college, and then the early years of my career with the Bruins organization, and it was almost like a trade-off. The Bruins won one year, then the Red Sox had won the year before, and then the Patriots won, and it was just, there was always a parade, and people were always, so I would love to see that, here in the city of Chicago, and sort of see some of these teams that are all kind of rebuilding. I mean, the Cubs are kind of in a similar, I don't think they're using the word rebuild, but there's definitely, they've got some work to do, it sounds like, there as well. So time will tell, Chris. Time will tell.
Caley, are you reading, do you read a lot of parenting books?
Yes, I do.
So is this,
I have no idea.
Kind of the new wave now? I'm sure you read a lot of books around newborn children, and now as you've got really two toddlers on your hands, that's kind of the next subgenre of parenting books that you're diving into.
Yep, I'm definitely a research first person. I don't lead with confidence in that aspect. I like to have all of my, information and then dissect it and do what I can, because there's a lot out there. So yes, I do think it's great to have tools and little tips and tricks along the way to help you deal with the day-to-days of these wild toddlers. They're the best things, but sometimes it's difficult to have a full conversation with somebody who's just not quite there yet.
Yeah.
Very excited for our dear friend Colby in the near future, because the newborn stage is very sweet. I mean, nothing better. It's pretty surreal. It's really that 12 to 18 month when they become toddlers that they are hilarious, but it's just what is going on here. I mean, nothing makes sense, and you kind of need to rely on friends or resources like I do. My audiobooks at night, I pop my AirPods on and pick up all kinds of good stuff, from nutrition to behavioral to everything, and that definitely helps me navigate being a full-time working mom in hockey. So I'm very excited for you, Colby, and Chris. I love talking tips and tricks with you on the side anyway. I think we all kind of are in the same boat with the curiosity in kids and sports.
Well, and the more Caley reads, the better off I am, because then I can just ask her a million questions.
We might need another podcast, parenting podcast.
She reads. Caley reads for the both of us, so it's a win-win for me. That's for sure.
I mean, I think the three of us as well. Yeah, I've definitely been picking Caley's brain on relationship stuff and things like that, and yeah, very curious about her experience being a working mom in sports broadcasting. So. She's a wealth of knowledge and information, Colby, isn't she?
Oh, thanks, guys.
The one book I have came at her recommendation for parenting. Well, for sleep schedules. So, and for eating too. So, website for eating, book for sleeping. She's not overwhelming me, Chris. She's like slow feeding me these things.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Takes a village.
Breadcrumbs. Yes.
Breadcrumbs.
All right, we are out of time on this episode of the Blackhawks Insider Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in on your preferred podcast platform. We'll be back next week as the season races towards its conclusion. Hopefully some better weather in Chicago, but this time of year, you never really know. We've got content always available for you at blackhawks.com in addition to this podcast. Our thanks to Brad Dollar and Southside Jake for the music featured on the show, and our thanks as always to our producers Trevor Bray and Jenna Rose. For Colby and Caley, I'm Chris. Thanks so much for checking us out on the Blackhawks Insider Podcast, and we'll talk to you next week.